Hello friends, welcome to my channel. So in today's session, we'll discuss some more interview questions on SDET role. So let's get started. First question will be, what are the factors that you'll consider while creating an automation framework? This is a very scenario level question, and the ask is to someone who has already started working in automation, and he has developed a new framework from scratch, and he knows like how to build a framework, what are the consideration, what are the things we'll include in the framework. So it will be, this question is for that kind of QA person. So these are some of the factors that I would consider. But like, what will be the framework type? For example, whether it's a unit testing framework or a integration testing framework or a end-to-end testing or a BDD, behavior driven development approach. So first thing is that we need to decide what is the type of framework we need to build. Next is, what is the programming language. Choosing a language that is well supported, widely used, and suits your team expertise. For example, Python, Java, or JavaScript, Ruby, whatever. So we need to decide what is the appropriate language we need to use. Tool selections. So tool selections can be testing tool selections or CI/CD tool selections, build tools, reporting tools. For example, testing tools can be Selenium, Appium, JUnit, TestNG, or PyTest. CI/CD tools can be Jenkins, Travis CI, or GitLab, and build tools can be Maven, Gradle, or NPM. Reporting tools can be Alio or Extent Reports, etc. We need to decide what are the tools we need to select. Design pattern. So there are several design patterns are there. For example, singleton pattern is there, factory pattern is there, page object model design pattern is there, page factory is there. So we need to decide like what is the design pattern we'll follow. And next is whether the design pattern will be keyword driven, okay, behavior driven development. Keyword driven means like we will create an Excel sheet and we'll pass the keyword there. Let's say click is a keyword, or wait until is a keyword, send key is a keyword. These kind of keywords will pass in the Excel. That is called a keyword driven framework. Now next is test coverage and test data management. So test coverage like ensuring the framework can handle various types of testing. For example, functional, non-functional can be performance, then UI and API, security. This kind of test coverage should your framework handle. So we need to decide that what will be the test coverage. Test data management, for example, what type of test data we need to use and where we will keep the test data. Then modularity and reusability. So this is very important. So like we need to design a framework in a modular way so that components can be reused across different tests. Okay. Configuration management. For example, configuration files like JSON or XML or YAML. So these kind of files will have like properties section to manage environmental specific settings. Next is scalability. The scalability means the framework should support adding more test and handling more test data, okay, as per project grows. So it should be able to handle more data. Extensibility is also another factor. Like it should be easy to extend the framework with additional features and integrate with other tools. Okay, then error handling and logging. So like implementing comprehensive logging and error handling to make debugging easier. So this is very important. So without debugging, framework is incomplete. Whatever code you're writing, you need to debug and make sure it works fine. Okay. So error handling is very important. Parallel execution, support for running tests in parallel to reduce execution time. In version control and CI/CD integration, that is integration with CI/CD pipelines for automation test execution, and make sure that it supports seamless integration. Okay. Then reporting and analysis, like detailed and user-friendly reporting of test results with clear insights. Okay. Then cross-platform and cross-browser testing. This is also very important because your framework should be supporting multiple platforms, let's say Windows, Mac, Linux, and browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge. This kind of cross-browser platform it should support. Okay, community and support like for example, prefer tools and languages with strong community support and regular updates. Okay, so it should support a lot of community and support. Let's say Stack Overflow is on the community, which where you can get ready-made support of your code, right? And you should have proper documentation. Let's say comprehensive documentation of setup, usage, and contribution guidelines. So these are some of the factors that you can basically consider while creating a framework, and that meets the needs of your project and provides a solid foundation for your testing efforts. Okay, let's move to the next question. Let's say next question is, are you familiar with behavior-driven development framework? If so, can you elaborate the components that you used in a BDD framework? So you should say like, yes, I have experience in behavior-driven development framework. So BDD is basically a collaborative approach for software development that enhances communication between developers, tester, and business stakeholders. It involves writing tests in a natural language style that describes the behavior of the application. Okay. Now, these are some of the components of BDD. For example, feature files. Feature files, for example, um, is a file where it contains the test scenarios written in Gherkin language, which is basically a plain text English format. Okay. Next is step definition. Step definition is a map of Gherkin steps in a feature file to code. So it basically maps with Gherkin step that you have mentioned in the feature file. Next is hooks. Hooks basically a block of code that run before and after each scenario or step. They are used to step and tear down tasks. So we'll have a demo at the end of the session. We'll discuss in the IDE. Next is page objects. Description like page objects represents the page of the application. Then they encapsulate the page elements and interaction with them. So next is test runner. Test runner like Cucumber. Let's say if you're using a framework like Cucumber, which is a BDD framework, you can create a Cucumber test runner class, which is responsible for executing the feature files. Okay. So these are the tools below which are commonly used in BDD framework. For example, like Cucumber is one of them, which is widely used for writing working feature files and mapping them to step definition, and then spec flow, BDD tool for .NET application, then behavior BDD framework for Python, and then BDD framework for Java, and then Serenity BDD enhances Cucumber with additional reporting and integration features. Okay, so these are common tools which you can use for basically for developing a BDD framework. So by incorporating these components, a BDD framework can provide a structured and collaborative approach for testing, ensuring that all stakeholders understand and contribute to the testing process. Next question: How will you have you employed any hooks in BDD? If so, how can you mention them? So this question is like how will you if somebody asks you to write a code, like how will you basically write the code structure? So basically, when you are creating a step file, you basically create an add before annotation and an add after annotation at the starting and the end of the step file. So then you can basically mention public void setup, and then you can basically write the code to set up preconditions. Let's say you can basically call in a test data, okay, and public void tear down. You can basically mention closing of the Chrome browser, okay, the driver dot quit. Those things you can mention here, okay. Next question is how to configure test data from CI/CD pipeline on Jenkins to run test execution. So this is one of the scenario question that you might get to make sure that you understand. Like instead of hard coding the test data in your framework, can you pass the test data from the Jenkins? So first thing is that you have to set up the Jenkins. Okay, set up Jenkins means once you install the Jenkins. Let's say you um, set up the Jenkins over a Tomcat server, or and then you can write like java-jar, mm, then jenkins.work. You can launch the Jenkins server. Then once you install all the plugins in Jenkins, you can basically create a Jenkins freestyle project or a pipeline script. Okay, then you need to basically configure the parameters. So to do that, you need to basically in Jenkins you can configure like the job to accept parameters. This allows you to pass specific environmental data to your tests. So how you do that? You can go to your job configuration, okay, and then there will be a checkbox like this page is parameterized. You can add the parameters such as choice parameter, string parameter, boolean parameter for different configurations. Okay, that's how you can basically parameterize your build. Another thing you can do is that you can pass the parameters to the test framework. So you can basically use environmental variables to pass parameter to the test scripts. So to do that, you can go to your system environmental variables path variables. There you can basically create some environmental variables and set the value of those. Let's say username, give the value, password, give the value. Then command line arguments also you can do like pass parameters as command line arguments to the test execution command. So configuring BDD framework to use parameters will be like this is the way you can do. You can basically create a cucumber hooks, okay, and using add setup uh, fun- function. There you can basically create like a string environment, and you can call your system environmental variable like environment, and similarly you can do the same for test type. So this is the way you can basically call your environmental variables in the code, and this will basically to do that you have to go to the if you have installed Jenkins in a local system, then Jenkins will pick these variables from your local environmental variables, or or if you have installed Jenkins in the virtual machine, okay, there you can set up the environmental variables path and give these variables. Okay, let's move on to the next session. Next slide. What will be your approach? Okay, what will be your approach to read data from alternative library? Okay, of Apache POI. Let's say alternative library if Apache POI is unavailable. Let's say interviewer asking you that you have written a utility class to call a Apache to connect to the Excel, okay, Microsoft Excel to read data using Apache POI. Now, the if interviewer asks you like suppose you have been asked to use some alternative library, how will you proceed? Okay, so what is your approach? In this case, your approach will be like you will choose, you will say that yes, I can do that. You will basically identify the requirements, like understand what you need from the library. Let's say read write capabilities, handling of different file formats. Okay, evaluate the libraries, check the documentation, community support, and performance benchmarks of the alternatives. Implement and test. Write sample code to ensure library meets your needs and integrate well in with your project. So here you will do like small POC work, like you will find what are the alternative libraries. For example, OpenCSV is there and that uses Jackson, and then JXL API is there, XL util is there. These kind of alternative libraries are there, which actually uses to read data from the Excel. Okay, so you will be doing a POC on these alternative libraries, and you will try to come up with a solution. Okay, so and then finally, by being a flexible and open to using different libraries, you can ensure that your project can continue smoothly even if your user tools are unavailable. This is a common practice for SDET role, that you have to explore different things, not just only one library that reads Excel. Okay, that's the expectation. Next question is, have you worked on test engine listeners and are they related to OOPS in Java? You can answer like yes, I have worked on test engine listeners. and they are indeed related to object-oriented programming principles in Java. TestNG listeners allow you to modify the default TestNG behavior and perform additional actions at various points during the test execution lifecycle. This is achieved by implementing interfaces provided by TestNG. So in this case, some of the common listeners will be like iTest listener, iSuit listeners, iInvoke method listener, iExecution listeners. Most of the time, you might be using iTest listeners mostly for your TestNG automation. So, what are the benefits of using listeners? Because listeners are used to enhance the reporting. You can basically like you can customize your reports mechanism by implementing iReporter or iTest listeners. So whenever you are printing your test result in HTML format, listeners basically enhance your reporting by customizing it. Okay, let's say you want to include the failures in your reports. Listeners can help you to print the exception messages. Okay, that's the way you can use iTest listeners. Custom logging. Listeners allow you to implement custom logging at various stages of the test execution. Setup and tear down. You can perform global setup and tear down actions using listeners like iExecution listener and iSuit listeners. Error handling. Implementing iInvoke method listeners or iTest listeners can help in handling errors or taking screenshot on test failure. So this is what I was talking, that you should be able to you take screenshot on test failures using iTest listener. Okay. So in conclusion, test engine listeners are a powerful feature that aligns well with OOPS principle in Java. They allow for flexible and modular test management the separation of by enabling the separation of concerns, okay, and enhancing the test execution process through custom behavior and reporting. Let's move to the next question. Have you ever upgraded the existing methods which is deprecated to your automation framework to Selenium 4? So this is a very current question. Let's say Selenium 3 we all have been working, and recently Selenium 4 has come into the public domain. So how will you upgrade your existing methods? So you should answer like yes, I have experienced upgrading an existing automation framework to Selenium 4. Selenium 4 introduced several changes and improvements over Selenium 3, including enhanced browser support, a new WebDriver protocol W3C. We all know that Selenium 3 was based on JSON web protocol, but now in Selenium 4 it is replaced with W3C, okay, protocol. It's like a WebDriver protocol W3C. Relative locators are also introduced in Selenium 4 and more. Upgrading to Selenium 4 often involves addressing deprecated methods and taking advantages of new features and improvements. Some of the new features that was introduced in Selenium 4 are update dependencies. Okay, you can update your dependencies in Selenium 4. Okay, to build by updating the version of Selenium of your build configurations. And then in the pom.xml, next is resolve deprecated methods. So identify and replace deprecated methods with their recommended alternatives. Okay. Next is utilize new features. Advantages will be like introduction of relative locators. Okay, so you can locate your elements relative to other elements. Okay, then upgrade WebDriver instantiation. Okay, so earlier we were using WebDriver drivers or new Chrome driver, but now in Selenium 4 we should be using something called as WebDriver manager.chromedriver.setup. This is the way we should instantiate Chrome driver. And next is handle new WebDriver protocol. Okay, W3C. Selenium 4 fully supports the WebDriver uh, protocol that improves the compatibility across different browsers, ensuring the framework handles the protocol correctly. Then update browser specific drivers. Ensure that You are using the latest version of browser drivers, for example, Chrome driver, Gecko driver that are compatible with Selenium 4. Then enhance test reports and logging. Then we should make sure that to enhance capabilities for logging and capturing network traffic in Selenium 4. Then run and validate tests. Then you should, in this, you should run the test execution suite to validate that everything works as expected with Selenium 4. Identify any issues and refactor the code as needed. Okay. Continuous integration. Okay. We should ensure that CI pipeline is updated to use Selenium 4 and runs test with the updated WebDriver binaries. Okay. So these are some of the features that was implemented in Selenium 4. Now, in conclusion, updating to Selenium 4 involves updating dependencies, refactor deprecated methods, utilizing new features, and validating your test suite to ensure compatibility. By following these steps, you can take full advantage of the improvements and new capabilities offered by Selenium 4, resulting in more robust and maintainable automation framework. Let's go to the next slide. It is very important question for interview. What all you will keep things in mind in terms of reviewing a code. So as a code reviewer, these are the it's a reviewing a code is a critical process to ensure the quality, readability, maintainability, and performance of the software. Here are the key aspects like code quality and readability. So it should have proper clarity. Like code should be easy to read and understand. Avoid complexity. Okay, then we should probably focus on as a code quality. We should, in terms of code quality, we should focus on naming conventions. For example, variables, functions, and classes identifier. We should make sure that it's named properly. It should be camel cased. Okay, should start with lowercase. This kind of naming convention, wherever it's applicable, should be used. Then comments and documentation. Okay, then verify that the code is well documented. Comment should explain the why not and what. Ensure that public APIs are documented. Okay, code formatting. Ensure consistent indentation, spacing, and line length. User like formatter should be applicable. So in Java, indentation is not a problem, but if you are using Python, you need to basically follow indentation. Functionality, we should focus on code performance. Okay, edge cases. Edge cases in the sense that all the edge cases, for example, expecting unexpected or testing the code with unexpected or invalid data. This is one of the edge case. Error handling, we should check if errors are handled gracefully and appropriately, ensuring that exceptions are caught and managed properly. Performance, we should take into consideration that there should not be any memory leaks or high CPU usage. Okay. Security, we should consider like sensitive data should be encrypted. Okay, using base 64, and we should avoid logging sensitive information using log4j. And maintainability, we should whenever it's possible, we should write smaller code and reuse that code again and again. And that is one of the criteria for modularity. Dependencies, like we should check for unnecessary dependencies, ensure that dependencies are up to date and securely managed. Scalability, consider if the code can handle increasing load or be easily extended in the future. Testing, we should follow proper design patterns, principles. Let's say whether you are writing unit tests or integration tests or test coverage. For example, we should ensure that code has sufficient test coverage. Code coverage tools can help in assessing this. Let's say one of the code coverage tools which I personally worked is Corbitura. Okay, Jacoco is one of the code coverage tool. SonarQube is also one of the code coverage tool that tells you the code quality. Okay, you can use that. Then best practices. Let's say we should follow design patterns. Check if appropriate design patterns are used when necessary. Principles, ensure adherence to solid principles. Okay, let's say interfaces, segregation, dependency, inversion, these kind of dependencies, principles we should follow. And we should also have sufficient logging in the code using loggers, log4j. And all the common functions are not replicated across business methods. That means you should create a base class where you keep all your common functions and don't repeat them in the business methods. We should avoid grammatical mistakes in the code, and we should follow standard naming conventions. Next is version control. Commit messages should be clear whenever you're using Git or Bitbucket. Commit message, it should be clear, and we should make small commits. Like whenever you make a smaller changes, we should commit them, make small commits, and review commit history. That means we should understand the context of changes by reviewing the commit history and related pull request or issues. Okay, code consistency, like consistency with code base. Ensure that the new code is consistent with the existing code base in terms of style and architecture. Configurations and environment. Verify that any configuration changes are appropriate and consistent across environments. And finally, like check. Finally, so these are some of the main points which you should consider, and and by keeping these aspects in mind during code review, you can ensure that code is of high quality, maintainable, secure, and performs well. Okay, so these are some of the main questions which you may come up in the interview during yours during SDET roles, and these are some of the scenario questions. So you may not get exact questions that you might have read in the theory, but interviewer might ask you in a general format without with by giving some scenarios. Okay, so now let's go to the code and see like how you can um, basically execute the things. So as we mentioned about BDD, so BDD is a behavior driven development. So you can see like you can create a feature file by an extension dot feature, right? So you can create a feature, and then in the feature you can write something like Facebook login scenario, and then you can give a tag like I want it as a sanity test case, or let's say you can mention something like at the rate recreation. You can also mention like that. Okay, and in Cucumber we mainly write scenario in the form of given, when, and then. So given I launch Facebook page, when I enter valid credentials, then I should see the home page. Now once you write this, you can basically go to your test runner class. So as I mentioned, Cucumber test runner is one of the um, class that runs the code. So you can see it is extended to abstract test runner Cucumber test. Okay, so this is basically one of the another abstract class. Okay, now you can use these annotations run with and Cucumber options. So you can call your feature here, and then you can use step definition. Basically glues your feature and step definition to make sure there is a connection wiring between them. Now coming back to your step file, so you can come to your steps. Okay, so whatever you have mentioned in your scenario file, given, when, then format, you can get your steps like that. Given I launch Facebook page, I entered valid credentials, I should see the home page. Okay, and then you should these are the main tests. And as we mentioned, like Cucumber hooks, you can create like add before and add after. So in add before, you can basically call your environmental variables test data. Let's say password. You can say system dot get environment, and then you can mention something called as password. Okay, so these variables you need to store in your environmental variables. So you can go your to environmental variables and create a key and store there these variables. Okay, these variables. So now this will be your format for like Cucumber step file. Now here you can basically instantiate like web driver is equal to new Chrome driver. This is a Selenium 3 format, but if you are using Selenium 4 format, then it will be a different structure. So it will be like it will be I'll write it here, WebDriver manager. It will be WebDriver manager dot Chrome driver dot setup. That's the way you write in Selenium 4. Okay, and then you can write this step behind this. So for this Selenium 4, you need to basically go to your POM file and install like Selenium 4 version, Selenium Java 4 version, and then you also need um, something called as WebDriver Manager. Okay, these two main dependencies you need to put in your POM file. Okay, and then you need to compile your code. Okay, so then now coming back to step file, you can write something like um, driver dot get, okay, https facebook.com. You can write like this. Okay, and then you can write your weights. Let's say implicit weights, driver dot manage dot timeouts dot implicitly weight, and then you can say something like 30 dot time unit seconds. So that's how you should give, and then you should um, give something like you should maximize your driver manage dot window. Okay, dot maximize. This will maximize your driver, your web page, Chrome driver, and then it will wait for 30 seconds to make sure that your entire DOM gets loaded. And if it doesn't load, then it will throw no such element dot exception. Okay, that's the way it works. And then you can just write like driver dot find elements by, okay, XPath. You can write your normal Selenium code. Okay, and then you can mention click method, and then or maybe you can mention um, dots and keys click. So if you are entering username, you can mention like this driver dot find element dot by path, and then you can say send keys. Send keys means you're entering the username and password, right? So you can say, so if you want to enter username and password, you can just make sure you pass two parameters here, username and password, and then you can enter here username and password. You can mention something like this string username and then string password, and then you can just say username. Okay, that's how you should pass. So if you are keeping a username here, then you should parameterize the username field in the feature file. For that, you should create scenario outline. Okay, we'll have another session for it later. So that's how you should write your Selenium code in the Cucumber hooks, or in the Cucumber step file. Okay, so I think we have covered most in the session. So I hope this session was useful for you all. If you like the session, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much, friends.